Seattle at the end of winter with drizzle after drizzle that seemed never-ending. The deserted streets sank into the night streetlights, casting pale golden reflections across the wet, blotched pavement. In despair, a trembling figure walked on in a small corner of the bustling city. Annabelle Jones, a black woman with a youthful yet weary face, clutched a small bundle wrapped in a blanket. The newborn in her arms let out a faint whimper, its fragile breaths mingling with the patter of rain. Every step Annabelle took felt as though 1,000 stones weighed her down. She knew she had no other choice. From pregnancy to childbirth, Annabelle had borne it all alone. Abandonment, the cruel tongues of society, and the suffocating fear of a bleak future. On a long, lonely night, she realized she could not give her daughter the life she deserved. Annabelle's heart ached with every beat, but reason forced her hand. The child needed somewhere safer. At the end of the tree-lined street loomed a grand mansion. Harris Mansion, home of Anthony Harris, the young billionaire who commanded a vast real estate empire. The house glowed brightly, standing proud in the rain, like an untouchable castle. Annabelle knelt before the iron gates, her trembling hands loosening the blanket. A tiny flushed face appeared, eyes shut tight like an angel in slumber. A hot tear fell onto the baby's soft skin. "My daughter, forgive me." Annabelle's voice broke into the rain. She placed the bundle on the steps, slipped out a small letter, and tucked it inside. Only a few scrawled lines filled the page. "Please take care of her. She deserves a better life. Her name is Emily." Annabelle lingered for a long moment, her vision blurred by rain and tears. She bit her lip until it bled, as if carving this sacrifice into her heart. Then, like a thief in the night, she turned and ran. The sound of rainfall drowned out the baby's fading cries. Inside the vast Harris mansion, Anthony Harris had just ended a long virtual meeting. At 30, his handsome but cold face exuded authority in every gesture. To America's business world, he was the real estate king of Seattle, decisive, ruthless, and immune to sentiment. Anthony loosened his tie and stepped into the grand hallway. Just as he was about to head upstairs, the doorbell rang strange well past midnight. He opened the door. The sight froze even his stone heart. On the porch beneath the downpour, a small bundle stirred. A faint, fragile cry broke the silence so that it could vanish into the wind. Anthony stooped down, lifting the bundle. His steely gray-blue eyes wavered at the sight of a tiny flushed face. The fragile infant trembled, yet clasped its tiny fingers around his hand, clinging as though its life depended on it. "What the hell?" he muttered, but his arms instinctively tightened around the baby. Staff rushed over in alarm. "Mr. Harris, should we call the police?" Anthony noticed the letter tucked in the blanket. Only a few lines, but they pierced the hidden, vulnerable corner of his heart, a part he thought had long since died. He looked up, a flash of resolve in his eyes. "No, this child will stay here." That night, the Harris mansion was thrown into chaos. Nurses and staff were summoned, but no one could soothe Emily's relentless cries. Cold as he was, Anthony could not ignore the sound. Awkwardly, he took the baby in his arms, only to make her wail louder. In that instant, the image of a woman vanishing into the rain flashed in his mind. A shiver ran through him. Who was she? Why abandon her child here? The crying went on all night, leaving no one in the mansion able to sleep. Anthony glanced at the clock, exhaustion clouding his eyes, yet determination shone through. Deep inside, an unfamiliar feeling stirred not responsibility, but an invisible bond. Emily, the name etched itself into his mind. Meanwhile, Annabelle stumbled like a lost soul through the Seattle rain. Her steps faltered, her heart twisting in agony. Every echo of Emily's cries seemed to follow her carving wounds deep into her chest. She collapsed onto a lakeside bench in the park, rain pelting her face, though she felt nothing. Her hands clenched and shook. "I did the right thing, didn't I?" she whispered. Reason told her Emily would live comfortably and be embraced by a wealthy family, but her heart bled screaming with loss. In that moment, Annabelle vowed even if she could not stay by her daughter's side, she would watch over her from afar. One day, she would return worthy at last. Back at Harris Mansion, Anthony stood by the wide window, gazing at the rain-drenched city. In his arms, Emily finally slept after hours of crying. Tiny, fragile, yet she weighed strangely heavy on his heart. He remembered his own lonely childhood, losing his mother early and growing up under his father's cold indifference. Perhaps that was why he saw himself in this child. Emily. Anthony whispered her name. From that moment, he knew this child would change his life forever. The rainy night in Seattle passed, binding two fates with a single secret. A mother torn apart, leaving her child out of helplessness. A powerful man became a father on one fateful night. Neither knew this decision was the beginning of storms, love, hatred, and secrets that would shake both families to their core. And in the darkness, the small pendant on Annabelle's neck glimmered faintly under the streetlight, the only trace left behind a key to the truth of her identity she had yet to uncover. The morning in Seattle, after last night's rain, was strangely bright. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the thick clouds, reflecting off the giant glass facade of Harris Group, the towering skyscraper that dominated the city center. Annabelle stood on the sidewalk, gazing up at the peak of the building, a surge of indescribable emotion rising in her chest. Today, she would officially step into a place she had never imagined, the West Coast's most potent real estate empire. She had not expected that after that fateful rainy night, life would lead her so close to Anthony Harris's world. "Annabelle Jones, correct?" The HR manager's voice cut through her thoughts. "Yes, that's me." Annabelle smiled faintly, her tone carefully composed. She had only applied for the project secretary position to make a living. Never did she expect Harris Group to hire her. She didn't know that her application had been approved simply because Anthony, swamped with work, had given a distracted nod without a second glance. The wide hallway led to the CEO's office. Annabelle froze momentarily at the sight of the dark wooden door bearing Anthony Harris's name. She drew a deep breath, her hand trembling unconsciously. The door opened. Anthony stood beside his desk, clad in a crisp white shirt and dark tie, his profile under the morning light making him appear even colder. His steel-gray eyes flickered when they landed on her. A moment of silence. Annabelle stiffened, her heart pounding. She recognized that gaze. He was the man who had once held Emily in the rain. "You." Anthony's deep, husky voice carried a hint of surprise, before quickly returning to composure. Annabelle bowed slightly. "Good morning, Mr. Harris. I'm the new hire assigned to administrative support." Anthony narrowed his eyes. Fate had dealt a cruel twist. The woman who had abandoned the child now stood before him as an employee under his command. That afternoon, Anthony returned to the mansion. Emily cried incessantly, despite 3 nannies taking turns to care for her. For the first time, he felt powerless. Just then, Annabelle summoned urgently to deliver some documents arrived at Harris Mansion. Still fumbling at the doorway, she froze when Emily's wailing pierced the air. Without thinking, Annabelle rushed forward. She instinctively gathered the baby into her arms when she saw the tiny flushed face. And then, a miracle. Emily went quiet. Her large, tear-filled eyes clung to Annabelle, as if she had finally found the safest place on earth. Anthony stood rooted to the spot. The nannies exchanged bewildered looks. Annabelle trembled all over, silent tears streaming down her face. "Shh, Mommy's here," "Don't cry, sweetheart," she whispered. The room fell into absolute silence. Anthony stepped closer, his sharp gaze dissecting every trace of emotion on her face. A strange certainty rose within him. This was no longer suspicion. This woman, she was Emily's mother. When Emily fell asleep in Annabelle's arms, Anthony pulled her into the hallway. His eyes bore into her like steel. "Can you explain this to me?" His voice was icy. Annabelle pressed her lips together, silent. Her mind screamed to deny it, but her heart betrayed her. "Mr. Harris, I just happened to be here. Maybe Emily took a liking to me. Please don't lie." Anthony cut her off. No child reacts like that to a stranger. He stepped closer, his towering frame suffocating her. "You're her mother, aren't you?" Annabelle faltered. Her dark eyes flickered with torment. Finally, she gave the faintest nod, an admission of the guilt she could no longer hide. Anthony's fist clenched tight. Questions raged within him. Why had she abandoned the child? Why did she run? And why did fate keep forcing them back together? In the days that followed, Annabelle continued working at Harris Group. Rumors quickly spread. The new employee has caught Mr. Harris's attention. While Annabelle only wanted to remain silent, Victoria Morgan, the high society heiress and Anthony's college friend, watched closely. To Victoria, Anthony was a prize she had never allowed herself to lose. And now seeing Annabelle near him ignited a firestorm of jealousy. At a business banquet, Victoria deliberately pulled Annabelle out to the balcony. Her voice dripped with sweetness, laced with venom. "Do you really think you belong next to Anthony? You're just an ordinary black woman. No background, no power. At best, you'll be a passing diversion. Don't delude yourself." Annabelle bit her lip hard, her fists clenched. She knew her place was fragile. Yet in Victoria's arrogant gaze, Annabelle recognized one thing. This was only the beginning of merciless trials. From his office above, Anthony watched through the one-way glass. He saw Annabelle standing alone on the balcony, her face resilient, though her eyes brimmed with tears. For the first time, his cold heart stirred. She was not just Emily's mother. She was a woman who endured every wound, every cruel word, and still carried light in her eyes. Anthony whispered to himself, "Annabelle Jones, I must understand you." As he lulled Emily to sleep that night, Anthony recalled the pain etched in Annabelle's eyes. He realized there was more than duty and truth in this game of fate, a more profound emotion, creeping in, one he dared not yet name. Emily's tiny hands grasped his shirt as she drifted into slumber. In that moment, Anthony made a decision. Whether Annabelle wished it or not, he would draw her back into his life, not only for Emily's sake, but because his heart was no longer his alone. On Monday morning, the atmosphere inside the glass fortress of Harris Group felt heavy and suffocating. Gleaming hallways, immaculate suits, the steady rhythm of shoes, striking marble floors, all came together to create an air of precision, leaving no cracks in its perfection. Annabelle entered the office with a stack of files in her arms. Since becoming Anthony Harris's project secretary, she had done everything to stay within the lines, arriving on time, working diligently, speaking little, and creeping. Yet no matter how careful she was, the curious glances and whispered gossip clung to her like a shadow. Who is she to be personally placed on the key project by Mr. Harris? They say she was seen at Harris Mansion last night. There must be some secret. How could an ordinary black woman get in here? The idle chatter in the break room, the scrutinizing stares, all of it stabbed into Annabelle like cold blades. She bit her lip, but kept her faint smile. She knew well, even the slightest weakness could get her devoured in this world. On the 28th floor, Anthony was presenting the expansion plan for the New York branch. His deep, steady voice carried such authority that the entire room was silent. Sitting at the end of the long table, Annabelle focused intently on her notes. She didn't realize that Victoria Morgan's sharp eyes followed her every move across the room. Victoria, dressed in a designer gown, exuded the elegance of a high society heiress commanding every glance. As the meeting ended, she strode up deliberately, her sweet voice carrying across the space. "Mr. Harris, I've prepared some additional proposals for the project. Perhaps you'd have time to discuss them privately." Anthony cast her a glance and replied curtly, "Send them directly to the project secretary." All eyes shifted instantly to Annabelle. Her face tightened, her heartbeat quickened. Victoria hid a cold smile, turning to look at Annabelle, as though she were nothing more than an unworthy intruder. "Oh, so it's her." Victoria's voice lingered sharp as a blade sheathed in velvet. The room grew heavy. Anthony did not explain, simply nodding to dismiss everyone. But Annabelle knew from then on she was firmly within Victoria's sights. Within just a few days, Harris Group buzzed with speculation. Some claimed Annabelle had been hired without proper screening. Others whispered she was Anthony's hidden mistress. The gossip spread beyond the company, surfacing on underground business forums across Seattle. Annabelle stumbled across a cheap headline online: CEO Anthony Harris, keeping a black secretary, rumor or truth. Her hands shook, her heart aching. She had never wanted the spotlight. All Annabelle wished for was a steady job and a simple life. But fate mocked her at every turn. That evening, Anthony summoned her to his private office. Under the glow of warm light, his tall figure stood imposingly, his cold face softened only by something indefinable in his eyes. "Have you heard the rumors going around?" His voice was low and rough. Annabelle nodded faintly. "I'm sorry. Perhaps it's because of me that..." Nombert Anthony cut her off, decisive. "You've done nothing wrong. I'll handle it." Annabelle lifted her gaze and met his steel-gray eyes. She caught a flicker of protection in them, shining through the frost. Her heart skipped a beat before quickly turning away, hiding the emotions threatening to surface. Victoria, of course, was not one to let things go. One afternoon, she deliberately arranged to meet Annabelle at a cafe near the tower. Outside, Seattle's sky was gray with misty rain drifting down. Placing her luxury handbag on the table, Victoria sipped her cappuccino, her red lips curling into a taunting smile. "Annabelle Harris Group isn't a place for someone like you. How far do you think you'll go? A woman of color, no prestigious degree, no background, and now caught up in rumors with Anthony." Annabelle sat upright, her gaze calm. "I'm here to work, not to fight. If you have a problem with me, say it plainly." Victoria let out a sharp laugh. "Plainly? Fine. Stay away from Anthony, or you won't have a place left in this city." The words cut into Annabelle like a knife. Yet instead of breaking, she gave a faint smile, her eyes resolute. "I don't need a place in Seattle. I only need to keep my dignity. And as for Anthony Harris, he'll decide his own life, not you." For the first time, Victoria saw an opponent who wasn't afraid. Beneath Annabelle's fragile gentleness lay a strength that made her blood boil with fury. Late one evening, Annabelle sorted reports at the office when the door opened. Anthony walked in carrying a coat. "It's cold out there. You're still here." His voice was low, husky. Annabelle hesitated. "I still have a few reports to finish." Anthony stepped closer and draped the coat gently over her shoulders. The unexpected gesture left Annabelle stunned. She looked up and met his gaze. He was no longer cold and distant, but his eyes now held a rare softness, warmth strong enough to melt ice. "Don't push yourself too hard. Harris Group needs talent, not someone burned out," he said quietly. Annabelle's heart trembled. For a fleeting moment, she wished time could stop. But reason pulled her back. She nodded lightly. Her voice choked. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Anthony studied her for a long moment, as if wanting to say more before turning silently away. Yet as his figure disappeared, Annabelle knew something had shifted, not only in her heart, but in his as well. Seattle sank once more into endless rain. Annabelle stood by the window of her small apartment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Her heart tangled with fear of exposure, the weight of her work, the sting of malicious rumors, and the nameless feelings stirring for Anthony. She pressed a hand against her chest, her heartbeat racing. "No, I mustn't," she whispered. And yet in her eyes, a faint spark of hope glimmered. Across town in his lavish residence, Anthony sat in silence before a glass of red wine. On the table lay Annabelle's file with details still left unexplained. He murmured to himself, "Annabelle Jones, you're hiding so many secrets, but I'll uncover them all, and I won't let you walk away from me ever again." As dawn broke over the skyline, Seattle was bathed in a soft golden glow. Anthony Harris stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows from his penthouse office at Harris Group, yet his mind was far away. The storm of whispers, the unspoken tension, and most of all, Annabelle's presence lingered in his thoughts, like an echo he couldn't silence. She wasn't like anyone else. Her quiet strength, the way Emily clung to her, it was too much to be a coincidence. Anthony's hand tightened around the crystal glass of water he had been holding. He had built his empire on clarity, never leaving things to chance. And yet, with Annabelle Jones, uncertainty clouded everything. There was only one way to end this torment. Late that evening, when the mansion had grown quiet and Emily was finally asleep, Anthony called his most trusted aide. "Arrange it," he ordered curtly. The aide's brows furrowed. "Sir, the DNA test. I want results within 72 hours. His voice was calm, but beneath it was a sharp tension that could cut glass. The aide hesitated. He had known Anthony long enough to realize this wasn't just about business, but he didn't dare ask questions. "Yes, Mr. Harris." Anthony remained in the dimly lit study as the door closed behind him. His gaze fell upon a framed photograph on the desk, Emily's first picture since she had arrived in his life. Her wide, innocent eyes stared back at him. He whispered into the silence, "If she truly is yours, Annabelle, then why did you abandon her?" Meanwhile, across town, Annabelle sat in her modest apartment staring at her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. Dark circles framed her eyes, a testament to sleepless nights filled with anxiety. The confrontation with Victoria echoed in her ears, and Anthony's unspoken suspicions pressed heavily on her chest. She felt the invisible net closing every time she stepped into the Harris building. Gossip spread faster than wildfire, and though she kept her head high, her heart trembled. But what haunted her most was Emily. The child's warm little body in her arms, the way she had stopped crying the moment Annabelle touched her. It was more than maternal instinct. It was an invisible bond that nothing could sever. And now, every day at Harris Group was a battle between her longing to be near her daughter and her fear of being exposed. Annabelle pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the window. "Please, let him never find out," she whispered. But deep down she knew secrets never stayed buried forever. 3 days later, the results arrived. A plain white envelope was placed on Anthony's desk. He dismissed everyone, shutting the heavy oak door until the silence was absolute. His hands, usually steady as stone, trembled slightly as he broke the seal. The words leapt out at him. Probability of maternity, 999.9%. The air seemed to vanish from the room. He sank into his leather chair, the paper crumpling in his grip. Every suspicion, every fleeting doubt, was now a brutal certainty. Annabelle Jones was Emily's mother. His chest rose and fell with the force of a storm barely contained. 100 questions roared in his mind. Why had she left Emily? Why pretend to be a stranger? Why lie every time their eyes met? But beneath the fury, another emotion whispered relief. Relief that his instincts had been right, that Emily's mother wasn't some faceless stranger, but the woman who had unknowingly tied his heart in knots. Anthony closed his eyes. His empire had faced countless battles, but none as dangerous as this, the struggle between his pride and heart. The following evening, Annabelle was summoned to Anthony's private office. She entered cautiously, clutching a file against her chest. The atmosphere was heavier than usual, the city lights casting long shadows across the room. Anthony stood by the window, back to her shoulders, rigid. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Harris?" she asked softly. He turned. His eyes, stormy, piercing, met hers. In his hand was the folded DNA report. He tossed it onto the desk between them. "Explain this." Annabelle froze. The bold black letters screamed at her from the page. Her throat tightened, words refusing to come. "You lied to me." Anthony's voice was sharp, each word laced with betrayal. "You lied to everyone. All this time, you were her mother." Tears welled in Annabelle's eyes, but she bit her lip, refusing to let them fall. "I didn't lie. I couldn't tell the truth." Couldn't. Anthony's laugh was bitter. "Or wouldn't." Her chest heaved. "You don't understand. I had no choice." No choice." He cut in, anger flashing in his eyes. "You left a newborn on my doorstep in the middle of the night. Do you have any idea what could have happened to her?" The words sliced through her like knives. Her vision blurred, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "I knew she would be safe with you," Annabelle whispered. Anthony staggered back as if struck. For a moment, the fury in his eyes faltered. "Safe with me." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken pain. Finally, Anthony's voice softened, still trembling with restrained emotion. "Why, Annabelle? Why didn't you come to me? Why hide? Why let me believe you were just a stranger?" Annabelle's tears finally spilled, tracing silent paths down her cheeks. "Because I wasn't strong enough. Because I was terrified. I didn't want Emily to grow up with a mother with nothing to give. And when I saw her in your arms, I thought maybe, just maybe, she could have the life I never could." Her voice broke. "I gave her up because I loved her too much." The confession hung in the air, raw and aching. Anthony's chest constricted, torn between rage and something far more dangerous, empathy. He wanted to hate her, to cast her out for the lies and the pain. But the sight of her trembling with love for Emily, radiating from every word, shattered his defenses. For the first time, Anthony Harris, the man who ruled boardrooms and crushed rivals, felt utterly powerless. He moved closer slowly, until only a breath separated them. Annabelle's eyes widened, but she didn't step back. "I don't know whether to strangle you," Anthony murmured, voice low and raw, "or to thank you for giving me Emily." Her lips parted, but no words came. He exhaled heavily, raking a hand through his hair. "For now, we'll keep this between us. Emily doesn't need confusion. But understand this, Annabelle, your lies have consequences, and I will not let you walk away again." Annabelle nodded weakly, relief and dread warring inside her. She had been exposed, yet a strange comfort lingered in his words. He would not let her go. That night, Anthony watched Emily sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. Annabelle's words haunted him. "I gave her up because I loved her too much." He had lived his entire life believing love was weakness. But now, as he traced a gentle hand over Emily's soft curls, he wondered if perhaps love was the only strength that mattered. Across town, Annabelle lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The secret was no longer hers to keep. Anthony knew everything. And though part of her felt liberated, another part trembled at what this meant. For fate had tied her to Anthony Harris in ways neither could undo, and the storm was only beginning. The morning sun spilled through the vast windows of Harris Mansion, painting the marble floors in shades of amber and gold. Emily giggled from her crib, the sound sweet and innocent, untouched by the storms that brewed around her. Anthony stood nearby, watching his expression unreadable. Annabelle knelt beside her daughter, fastening a tiny bow into Emily's curls. She looked peaceful, almost fragile in the soft light, and for a moment, Anthony allowed himself to forget the battles between them. But then his eyes caught on something. As Annabelle bent forward, the neckline of her blouse shifted slightly, revealing a delicate chain around her neck. A small, oval-shaped pendant hung at its end, worn but glimmering faintly in the light. A strange recognition struck Anthony. His breath stilled. That necklace. It wasn't just an ornament. It was a symbol he had seen in the corridors of power, etched into portraits and family crests, the Morgan family heirloom. Later that day, when Annabelle excused herself to put Emily down for her nap, Anthony paced his study restlessly. His mind replayed the glimmer of that pendant again and again. He remembered the whispers of old scandals, the Morgan family's lost child. Years ago, there had been rumors of a daughter taken from her mother after a tragic accident never found. The story had faded into legend among Seattle's elite, but the emblem on that pendant had been unforgettable. An intricate carving of twin roses entwined the Morgan crest. Could it be possible? Anthony poured himself a drink, but barely touched it. He couldn't shake the image of Annabelle's tears in his office days ago, the anguish in her voice when she confessed to giving up Emily out of love. Now another possibility loomed more dangerous than anything he had expected. Annabelle Jones wasn't just Emily's mother. She could be the rightful heir to one of the most powerful families in America. And that changed everything. That evening, Annabelle sat in her small apartment holding the necklace. She rarely let anyone see it, but the memories flooded tonight. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her mind. Never lose this bell. One day, it will tell you who you truly are. Her thumb traced the faded engraving. For as long as she could remember, the pendant had been her only connection to a past she didn't understand. Her mother had died before explaining its origin, leaving only fragments of stories, shadows of truths Annabelle never dared chase. But now, with Anthony's piercing gaze still haunting her, she wondered if her secret was no longer safe. The next day, Anthony summoned Annabelle to his office again. She entered cautiously, her steps echoing against the polished floor. On the desk lay a folder, but Anthony's eyes weren't on it. They were on her, or rather on the pendant that peeked from beneath her blouse. "Where did you get that necklace?" he asked, his calm tone edged with steel. Annabelle instinctively reached up, fingers brushing against the pendant. "It was my mother's." "Your mother?" Anthony leaned forward. "Do you even know what it is?" Confusion flickered across her face. "It's just a keepsake." "Why?" Anthony's lips curved into a grim line. "That's not just a keepsake, Annabelle. It's the Morgan family crest. And as far as I know, only one person was said to carry that heirloom." Annabelle's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "That you may not be who you think you are." Over the following days, Anthony quietly investigated. He used connections only a man of his stature could access: archived hospital records, private investigators, even whispers from old allies of the Morgan family. Piece by piece, a puzzle began to form. Born in secrecy and raised in obscurity, Annabelle Jones had bloodlines that reached into one of Seattle's most powerful dynasties. Her mother Eleanor had once been deeply entwined with Richard Morgan, patriarch of the Morgan Empire. Their love affair had been silenced by scandal, and Eleanor was cast aside when tragedy struck. Annabelle, the child of that union, had vanished from the city's radar until now. When the final piece of proof landed on Anthony's desk, he felt the weight of destiny pressing down. Annabelle wasn't just Emily's mother. She was the lost daughter of Richard Morgan. When Anthony told her the truth, Annabelle recoiled, as though struck. "No, that can't be true," she whispered, clutching the pendant. "I'm just Annabelle Jones. That's all I've ever been." "Open your eyes," Anthony urged. "It explains everything: the necklace, your mother's silence, the rumors that never died. You are the missing Morgan heir." Annabelle shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "If that's true, then why did he never look for me? Why did no one come?" Her pain cut deeper than Anthony had expected. He had seen her strength, her resilience. But now he saw the little girl who had grown up abandoned, fighting for every scrap of dignity. Anthony's voice softened. "They may have looked, and they may have failed. But whether you accept it or not, the blood in your veins is undeniable." News travels fast among the elite, and Victoria Morgan was no stranger to secrets. When whispers reached her that Annabelle might be tied to the Morgan family, fury ignited her. It wasn't enough that this woman had captured Anthony's attention and Emily's heart. Now she threatened to stake a claim on the empire Victoria had been groomed to inherit. Victoria vowed to crush her. Late at night, Anthony found Annabelle sitting alone in the mansion garden, the moonlight casting silver patterns across her face. The pendant glimmered faintly at her throat, as if mocking them both. "Do you hate me for telling you?" he asked quietly. Annabelle didn't look up. "I don't know who I am anymore. I thought my only secret was Emily. Now, everything feels like a lie." Anthony's chest tightened. He had built his empire on truths carved from steel, but this woman, this fragile, fierce woman, was unraveling every rule he had lived by. He took a step closer, his voice low. "You are Annabelle Jones. You are Emily's mother. And whatever bloodline you carry doesn't change the woman standing before me." Her eyes lifted to his, glistening with unshed tears. "And what am I to you, Anthony?" The question hung in the air. Dangerous, fragile, beautiful. Anthony's jaw clenched. For once, the man who always had an answer could only whisper the truth his heart had been hiding. "I can't let myself want, and everything I can't let go. But fate is never kind to those who dare defy it." As the Morgan patriarch began to hear rumors of the lost daughter's return, the foundations of Seattle's elite trembled. If Annabelle truly was the heir, she represented both salvation and destruction. Salvation for the fractured Morgan legacy, and destruction for those like Victoria, who had built their power on lies. For Annabelle, the revelation wasn't just a key to her past. It was the spark that would ignite a war between families' love and ambition, truth and betrayal. And Anthony knew as he watched her walk back into the mansion, with the moonlight tracing her silhouette, that the storm was far from over. Because now Annabelle wasn't just his secret. She was Seattle's most dangerous truth. The Morgan estate stood like a fortress on the outskirts of Seattle, its towering gates adorned with the crest of twin roses. Generations of wealth and power seeped from every stone of its sprawling mansion. But beneath the grandeur lay secrets that had rotted the family from within. Inside the stately library, Richard Morgan sat in his high-backed leather chair, silver hair framing a face hardened by decades of ruthless ambition. Yet for the first time in years, his expression carried something softer: regret. A file lay open before him, pages filled with photographs, reports, and a single name: Annabelle Jones. His daughter. The child he had lost. The child Eleanor had borne in silence. She had been alive all this time, raised in obscurity, hidden in the shadows. And now, fate had delivered her back into his orbit. Richard's hand trembled as he poured himself a drink. "Eleanor, I failed you, but I will not fail her again." Annabelle received the letter on a rainy afternoon, The elegant handwriting, the embossed crest, the heavy paper all screamed of wealth and authority. Her fingers shook as she read the words. To my daughter Annabelle, I wish to meet you. Please give me the chance. I was once too blind to take it. Richard Morgan. Her breath caught. The world tilted. For years she had wondered about her father, cursed him in silence for abandoning her mother, and buried the questions in a place too painful to touch. Now the man himself was reaching for her. When Anthony entered the room, she was found clutching the letter. Her face was pale, and his jaw was clenched. He took the paper from her hand, scanning it, his expression unreadable. So he finally crawls out of the shadows, Anthony muttered, tossing the letter onto the table. Morgan's blood runs cold until it needs redemption. Annabelle looked up at him, torn. He's my father, Anthony. Shouldn't I at least hear him out? Anthony's eyes darkened. And what do you think he wants, Annabelle, you or the power your name now carries? His words stung, but she couldn't deny the doubt. Still, a part of her heart whispered for closure, for the answers she had been denied all her life. The meeting was arranged at the Morgan estate. Annabelle stepped through the grand marble foyer, her heels echoing against the polished floors. The weight of history pressed on her every portrait on the wall, watching as though judging her claim to belong. Richard rose from his chair the moment she entered. His eyes, gray like storm clouds, softened with an emotion Annabelle hadn't expected: vulnerability. Annabelle, he breathed, as though saying her name could rewrite time. She hesitated, her heart caught between anger and longing. Mr. Morgan. He flinched at the distance in her voice, but pressed on. I don't deserve to call you my daughter, not after the years I failed you. But you are my blood. Eleanor. She kept you safe from me, from the chaos of this world. And now that you are here, I want to make it right. Annabelle's hands tightened around the strap of her bag. Make it right. Where were you when she was dying? Where were you when I needed a father? Her voice cracked, tears shimmering in her eyes. Richard's face crumpled. I was a coward. I chose the Morgan Empire over love, over family. And I have paid for it every day since. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. I can't forgive you, just because you regret it now. The silence stretched heavy between them. Finally, Richard whispered, all I ask is a chance. Let me show you the world that should have been yours. From the staircase above, Victoria Morgan watched the scene unfold. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the banister as jealousy burned hot in her chest. For years, she had been groomed as the crown jewel of the Morgan Empire. She had worn the name like armor, wielded it like a weapon. And now this woman, this outsider, was about to steal it all. Later that night, Victoria confronted Richard in his study. You can't be serious about bringing her into this family. She doesn't belong here. Richard's gaze hardened. She belongs here more than you ever will, Victoria. She is Eleanor's daughter. My daughter. The true Morgan heir. Victoria's composure cracked, rage flashing in her eyes. And what about me? I've dedicated my life to this family, to this empire, and you would cast me aside for some girl who didn't even know we existed. Richard's voice was like steel. Enough. Annabelle is family. She will have her rightful place, whether you like it or not. Victoria stormed out, her heart pounding with fury. In that moment, her mask slipped. The perfect, charming socialite vanished, revealing the venom beneath. If Annabelle Jones thought she could take everything away, she would soon learn the cost of crossing Victoria Morgan. That evening, Anthony found Annabelle sitting on the balcony of Harris Mansion, staring out at the city lights. The letter from her father lay crumpled beside her. He leaned against the railing, his voice low. So what will you do? Annabelle sighed, her fingers tightening around the pendant at her neck. I don't know. Part of me wants to slam the door in his face. But another part, I've wanted to hear his voice all my life, to know why. Anthony studied her, the pain in her eyes, twisting something profound inside him. Be careful, Annabelle. The Morgan Empire devours everything it touches. If you step into that world, there may be no way back. She turned to him, her gaze searching. Would you pull me back if I were lost? His chest tightened. For a moment, the walls he had built around his heart faltered. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering. I wouldn't let you go, Anthony whispered. In the following days, Richard tried to draw Annabelle into his world. Lavish dinners, introductions to influential figures, whispers of inheritance. But Annabelle resisted, her heart torn between the life she had known and the glittering cage he offered. Meanwhile, Anthony's protectiveness only deepened. He attended every meeting and every encounter, and his presence was a shield between Annabelle and the machinations of the Morgan dynasty. And though Annabelle tried to keep her distance, her heart betrayed her. Every glance, every touch, every moment with Anthony burned brighter than all the jewels the Morgans could dangle before her. Victoria, however, was not idle. Behind closed doors, she plotted with ruthless precision. If Annabelle truly were the heir, Victoria would have to destroy her reputation, dignity, and even her life if necessary. And Annabelle, though she did not yet know, it was walking into a storm more dangerous than any she had ever faced. One night, as the tension weighed heavily on her chest, Annabelle stood in the garden of Harris Mansion, staring up at the stars. Anthony approached silently, his presence steadying her. Do you regret it? He asked softly. Regret what? Opening the door to your past. Annabelle's voice trembled. I don't know, but I'm afraid, Anthony. Fearful of what this will cost me. Scared of what it will cost Emily. He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. Then let me bear it with you. Whatever storm is coming, we face it together. She looked up into his eyes, and for the first time, hope flickered amidst the fear. Far across the city, in the opulent halls of the Morgan estate, Victoria stood before the mirror, her reflection cold and unyielding. You will never take what's mine, Annabelle, she whispered to herself, her lips curving into a dangerous smile. And thus the stage was set. Blood ties had been revealed, but betrayal, envy, and the promise of war came with them. Seattle's skyline glittered under the pale moonlight, a city alive with secrets. Inside Harris Mansion, Annabelle felt a rare calm as she tucked Emily into bed. The child's tiny fingers clutched her mother's hand before slipping into dreams, and for a fleeting moment, Annabelle believed that perhaps, just perhaps, peace was possible. But peace has a way of shattering when envy sharpens into violence. Victoria's rage festered like an open wound across town in the velvet dark corridors of the Morgan estate. Her father's words echoed cruelly in her mind. She is the true heir. No, Annabelle Jones would not steal the empire, the family, or Anthony. Victoria dialed a number, her voice cold and deliberate. It's time. Make sure she disappears. Quietly, permanently. The man on the other end didn't ask questions. He answered, consider it done. The following evening, Annabelle left the Harris offices late. The night air was cool, her heels clicking against the quiet streets as she headed toward her car. She was exhausted, her mind tangled with thoughts of her father's plea, Anthony's warnings, and the storm brewing around her. She didn't notice the black SUV until it was too late. The door slid open, a cloth pressed against her face. The acrid scent of chemicals filled her nose and darkness swallowed her whole. Anthony returned to Harris Mansion hours later, only to find Emily crying inconsolably in the nanny's arms. His heart lurched. Emily never cried like this. Not anymore. He raced upstairs, but the room was empty. Annabelle was gone. His pulse thundered. Panic clawed at his chest as he barked orders. Check every camera, every car, every record of her leaving tonight. The head of security hesitated. Sir, there's no footage of her departure. It's like she vanished. Anthony slammed his fist against the desk, his composure cracking. The man who had always been in control now felt his world unraveling. Anthony Harris faced a fear greater than failure, for the first time losing Annabelle. Annabelle awoke in a dim, abandoned warehouse. Her wrists were bound, her head pounding. The damp air reeked of oil and dust, and shadows stretched across the concrete floor. A voice slithered from the darkness. You should have stayed in obscurity, Miss Jones. She recognized the man, one of Victoria's hired enforcers, a brute with dead eyes. Annabelle's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. Do you know what you're doing? If Anthony finds out, he smirked. That's the point. He won't. Yet beneath her fear, a spark of defiance burned. Annabelle had been abandoned before, silenced before. But she was no longer just a lost daughter or a forgotten woman. She was Emily's mother, and she would fight tooth and nail to survive. Back at the mansion, Anthony's fury had transformed into icy determination. He had connections across every corner of the city, politicians, business people, even those who operated in shadows. I don't care what it takes, he told his head of security. Find her, alive. He barely slept, pacing like a caged lion. Emily asleep on his chest. He whispered to the child's soft curls, I'll return her. I swear to you. The promise wasn't just to Emily. It was to himself, to Annabelle. 2 nights later, Anthony's men tracked down whispers of a woman matching Annabelle's description. A warehouse at the edge of the docks, guarded, but not impenetrable. Anthony didn't hesitate. He went himself. Clad in black, his eyes sharp with lethal resolve, Anthony moved like a predator through the shadows. His heartbeat roared louder every step closer, not from fear, but from something fiercer, love. Inside the warehouse, Annabelle sat against the wall, her strength waning, but her spirit unbroken. When the guards stepped away to check the perimeter, she closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer. And then chaos. A door slammed open. Shouts rang out. Shots echoed in the cavernous space. Anthony emerged from the shadows, his figure framed by the harsh light spilling through the doorway. His eyes locked on hers. Annabelle. Her heart leapt, tears blurring her vision. Anthony. He cut through her captors with ruthless precision, every movement a testament to his fury. Within moments, he was at her side, untying the ropes with trembling hands. You're safe now, he breathed, pulling her into his arms. Annabelle clung to him, her body trembling against his chest. For the first time, she let the walls fall away. I knew you'd come, she whispered. They stumbled into the cool night air, the chaos fading behind them. Anthony held her as though he'd never let go, his hand cradling her face, his eyes burning with emotions he could no longer deny. You could have died, he rasped. Do you have any idea what that would have done to me? Annabelle's tears spilled freely now. I was so afraid. But thinking of Emily, of you, it kept me alive. Something inside him broke. No, not broke, burst free. Anthony lowered his lips to hers, the kiss fierce, desperate, and tender. It was not a kiss of convenience, nor of stolen passion. It was a vow, a declaration, a surrender. Annabelle melted into him, every fear dissolving in the fire of his embrace. For the first time, she felt the truth that had always been there, buried beneath the lies and the pain. She loved him. And he, Anthony Harris, the man of steel, loved her back. Hours later, back at Harris Mansion, Annabelle sat by Emily's crib, stroking her daughter's hair. Anthony stood nearby, watching the two of them, his heart fuller than ever. But even as warmth filled the room, shadows lingered. Victoria had drawn first blood, and Anthony knew she would not stop until she eradicated Annabelle. He moved closer, his voice a low vow. "They will not touch you again, not while I breathe." Annabelle turned her eyes, still red from tears but steady. "We can't run from this, Anthony. We have to face it." He cupped her face in his hands, his gaze fierce. "Then we'll face it together." Far away, Victoria sat in her penthouse suite staring at the city lights. News of the failed abduction had already reached her. She smashed her glass against the wall, fury blazing in her eyes. "So be it," she hissed. "If I cannot take her quietly, then I'll burn her world to the ground." The war for love, power, and legacy had only just begun, and in the center of it all stood Annabelle and Anthony, bound by fate, passion, and a love now too powerful to be denied. Seattle's elite gathered beneath the glittering chandeliers of the Langston Grand Hotel, where the annual charity gala unfolded in a blaze of opulence. Diamond necklaces sparkled, champagne flowed, and laughter rang through the gilded hall. But beneath the dazzling surface, the air throbbed with tension. For Annabelle, stepping into the ballroom felt like walking into the lion's den. Draped in an elegant black gown, her every move was watched, whispered about, dissected. She had become the scandal, the mystery, the woman who had appeared from nowhere to threaten the balance of power in Seattle's wealthiest families. Beside her, Anthony's presence was an anchor. His hand rested lightly at her back, firm, protective, a silent message to every onlooker: "She is mine." Yet Annabelle knew this night would be no ordinary gathering. Shadows whispered of secrets ready to burst into the light. Victoria Morgan entered the ballroom like a queen, her red gown blazing as if to announce war. Her lips curved in a smile too sharp to be sweet, her eyes sweeping over the crowd until they landed on Annabelle. The contempt in that glance was unmistakable. Richard Morgan was already there, surrounded by old allies and rivals, but his attention flicked often toward Annabelle. His expression held pride and a desperate plea for her acceptance and forgiveness. Annabelle felt torn between the father who had abandoned her and the man beside her who had risked everything to save her. Her heart knew where she belonged, but her mind wrestled with the weight of legacy. As the evening progressed, a man approached Anthony discreetly. Tall, gaunt, and nervous, he carried an envelope tightly to his chest. "Mr. Harris," he whispered, "you don't know me, but I have something you need to see. It's about the accident. Eleanor's accident." Anthony's eyes narrowed. He took the envelope, slipping it into his jacket without a word. The man vanished into the crowd as quickly as he had appeared. Later, Anthony opened the envelope in the quiet of a side corridor. Inside were photographs, documents, and a grainy security tape still. His chest tightened as the evidence burned into him. The car that had struck Eleanor, the car that had stolen Annabelle's mother, belonged to the Morgans. More damning still, the driver listed in the report was Victoria Morgan. Anthony's jaw clenched. Fate had delivered him a weapon, but one that could shatter lives. Back in the ballroom, speeches began. Laughter filled the air. Glasses clinked. Yet Anthony's gaze never left Victoria. She floated through the crowd with effortless charm, her mask firmly in place. But Anthony knew now what lay beneath. Annabelle noticed his intensity. She touched his arm lightly. "What is it?" Anthony's eyes softened as they met hers, but his voice was low and grave. "The truth, Annabelle. And it's darker than we imagined." Before she could press him, the master of ceremonies announced, Richard Morgan. The patriarch stepped onto the stage, the weight of age and guilt heavy on his shoulders. Tonight, Richard began, his voice booming. We gather for charity, but we also gather for legacy, for family. And it is time to acknowledge the daughter I once lost. Gasps rippled through the crowd as eyes turned toward Annabelle. Whispers ignited like wildfire the lost heir, the scandal, the truth. Annabelle's chest tightened, heat rising to her cheeks as every gaze pinned her. She wanted to flee, but Anthony's hand pulled at her waist, grounding her. Richard extended his hand. Annabelle Jones, my daughter, the rightful heir of the Morgan legacy. The ballroom erupted in murmurs, some of awe, others of outrage. And then a voice cut through the noise like a blade. This is absurd. Victoria's voice rang sharp, carrying across the hall. She stepped forward, her face a mask of fury barely concealed. She is nothing but an imposter, a woman with no claim, no proof, just a pendant and a sob story. Gasps echoed again. The crowd shifted, eager for scandal. Annabelle stood frozen, her throat tight. But Anthony stepped forward, his gaze cold, his voice commanding. You want proof, Victoria? He pulled the envelope from his jacket, holding it high. Then, let's speak of evidence. Proof of what really happened to Eleanor. Proof of who was behind her death. The room went silent, the tension electric. Anthony's voice cut like steel. The accident that killed Eleanor Jones was no accident at all. The car that struck her belonged to the Morgan family. And the driver was you, Victoria. The crowd gasped, a wave of shock rippling outward. All eyes turned to Victoria. Her face drained of color, then flushed red with rage. You lie, she spat. You fabricate this to protect her. This is slander. Anthony opened the folder, spreading photographs and reports across the podium. Here are the records, the ownership papers, the security footage. You can deny all you want, but the truth doesn't bend for you, Victoria. Annabelle's hands trembled as tears filled her eyes. Her mother's death, years of unanswered questions, suddenly sharpened into brutal clarity. It was Victoria. The woman who had tormented her from the day she stepped into Harris Group, who had treated her as nothing, had in fact stolen the most precious person from her life. Victoria's composure, cracked fury twisting her beautiful features. She was in my way. Eleanor was weak, and so is her daughter. Neither of them deserves the Morgan name. The room erupted in chaos. Gasps, shouts, condemnation. Richard staggered back, his face pale as ash. You! His voice trembled with grief and rage. You murdered her. Victoria's eyes glittered with venom. And I'd do it again before letting her take everything from me. Guards surged forward. Richard's voice broke as he commanded, Take her away. She is no Morgan. She is nothing. Victoria fought, screamed, but her reign of lies crumbled before the weight of evidence. The perfect mask she had worn for years was gone, leaving only a desperate, venomous creature exposed to the world. Amidst the chaos, Annabelle sank into Anthony's arms, her body trembling. The truth had been revealed, but the wound it opened was raw, bleeding. My mother, she whispered brokenly. All these years. And it was her. Anthony held her close, his hand stroking her hair, his voice steady. She can't hurt you anymore. She can't hurt Emily. It's over, Annabelle. But she shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. It will never be over. I'll never get my mother back. Anthony's chest tightened. He wished he could take her pain, bear it himself. Instead, he pressed his lips to her temple, whispering fiercely, Then let me be your strength. Let me carry you through this. When the gala ended, the world outside was no longer the same. Victoria's name was in ruins, and her legacy was shattered. Richard stood broken but resolute, vowing to make amends for the sins that had poisoned his family. And Annabelle, though grief-stricken, had found truth at last. Painful, brutal, but undeniable. As Anthony guided her into the waiting car, she turned to him, her eyes glistening but steady. "You've given me back the truth. Even if it broke me, you gave it back." Anthony cupped her face, his gaze fierce. "And I'll give you more. Not just truth, Annabelle. A future." For the first time that night, a fragile smile curved her lips. Amidst the ruins of lies, something new had taken root. Hope. Seattle had never seen a wedding like this. The city buzzed with anticipation whispers, traveling from the boardrooms of Wall Street to the cafes lining Pike Place. It wasn't merely a union of two hearts. It was the merging of legacies, the rewriting of histories. The St. Augustine Cathedral. A towering stone and stained glass masterpiece had been chosen for the ceremony. Its bells had tolled for centuries, but tonight they rang for a love that had survived secrets, betrayal, and blood. Annabelle stood in the bridal chamber, her reflection shimmering in the tall antique mirror. Draped in white satin that clung to her curves before cascading into waves of lace, she looked ethereal, untouchable, like a woman born to be adored. But behind her, beauty was steel. She had walked through storms and come out stronger. In a tiny dress of cream silk, Emily toddled beside her, clutching her hand. Mommy was pretty. She giggled, her voice sweet as bells. Annabelle bent down, kissing her daughter's forehead. "You're the prettiest, my love." Her eyes lifted once more to the mirror. She saw her mother's face in her own, remembered the woman who had carried her through hardship, and whispered, "This is for you, Mama, for us." In the nave, Anthony Harris stood like a statue of marble and fire. His black tuxedo was cut with precision, his presence commanding every gaze. For years, people had feared him, envied him, whispered about his ruthlessness. But tonight, they saw something else, a man undone by love. As he adjusted his cufflinks, Richard Morgan approached, his face lined with pride and sorrow. "She is radiant," he murmured. Anthony inclined his head. "She's more than radiant. She's everything." Richard placed a hand on his shoulder. "Take care of her, Anthony. She deserves more than this world has ever given her." Anthony's eyes softened. "I intend to." The great doors of the cathedral creaked open, and a hush fell over the congregation. Music swelled, strings and organ filling the vaulted ceiling as Annabelle appeared at the threshold, Emily walking beside her, carrying a small bouquet. The crowd gasped. Whispers swept through the pews. The lost heir. The woman who defied fate. The bride of Anthony Harris. Anthony's breath caught. For a man who had mastered every deal and crushed rivals without blinking, his composure crumbled at the sight of her. His heart thundered, his lips parted in awe. "She's mine," he thought fiercely. "At last, she's mine." Annabelle's eyes locked with his as she walked the long aisle. Every step erased the shadows of the past, carrying her closer to the man who had saved her, fought for her, loved her when she had forgotten how to love herself. The priest's voice rose solemnly, ancient words echoing through the cathedral. But when it came time for vows, Anthony stepped forward, breaking tradition, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "I have built empires, Annabelle. I have conquered boardrooms, destroyed rivals, and believed myself untouchable. But you—" His gaze softened, his hand trembling as he reached for hers. "You brought me to my knees. You showed me that power means nothing without love. I vow to protect and fight for you, never letting the world take you from me again. You and Emily. You are my heart, my family, my forever." Tears glistened in Annabelle's eyes as she whispered her vow in return. I came into your world as nothing more than a shadow carrying secrets and shame. But you gave me light, Anthony. You gave me strength when I thought I had none. I vow to walk beside you through every storm, to love you when it's easy, and even when it's hard. You are not just the man I love. You are the home I never thought I'd find. The cathedral held its breath as the rings were exchanged, gleaming symbols of promises sealed in eternity. But the great doors slammed open, just as the priest raised his hands to declare them husband and wife. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Victoria Morgan stormed in her once glamorous gown, torn her eyes wild with desperation. "You can't!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "She doesn't deserve him. She doesn't deserve this family, this legacy. It should have been me." Guards rushed forward, but Victoria shoved past them, staggering down the aisle. "Anthony, don't do this. She'll ruin you. She'll destroy everything." Annabelle froze, Emily clinging to her skirts, eyes wide with fear. For a heartbeat, the cathedral teetered on chaos. Anthony stepped forward, his gaze like steel. "Enough, Victoria." But she wasn't finished. She pulled a small vial from beneath her cloak, her hands shaking. "If I can't have this, no one will." The crowd screamed, panic erupting. Before she could strike, Anthony moved like lightning. He seized Victoria's wrist, the vial shattering harmlessly against the marble floor. The acrid scent of poison filled the air. He wrenched the weapon from her grip, his voice a thunderclap. "You've destroyed lives with your envy, Victoria, but you will not destroy hers. Not today, not ever." The guards dragged her away, her screams echoing through the cathedral. "This isn't over. She'll never be one of us." But as the doors slammed shut behind her, silence returned. Anthony turned back to Annabelle, his eyes softening instantly, the fury replaced by fierce devotion. "Are you all right?" he whispered, cupping her face. Annabelle's tears spilled, but her voice was steady. "As long as you're here." The priest, though shaken, cleared his throat. "Do you, Anthony Harris, take Annabelle Jones to love and cherish in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live?" Anthony's voice rang with conviction. "I do. And do you?" "Annabelle Jones take Anthony Harris?" "I do," she breathed, before the words were finished. The priest smiled faintly. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Cheers erupted as Anthony pulled Annabelle into his arms. Their kiss was not just love, it was defiance, triumph, and the promise of forever. The cathedral shook with applause, the bells ringing across Seattle, as if to declare to the heavens that they belonged together. The reception that followed was a spectacle of grandeur. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables draped in white roses. Orchestras played sweeping melodies, and guests toasted until dawn. But for Anthony and Annabelle, the world faded. They danced in each other's arms, their bodies moving as one, their smiles radiant. Emily twirled between them, giggling the three, glowing like a family long destined to be. Anthony leaned close, his lips brushing Annabelle's ear. "Mrs. Harris," he whispered, savoring the name. She laughed softly, her heart swelling. "Repeat it." He kissed her, murmuring against her lips. "Mrs. Harris, my wife, my love, my forever." Yet even as joy filled the air, Anthony's mind remained sharp. Victoria's attempt had failed, but her venom lingered. He knew she was still out there plotting in the shadows. And he also knew this, their greatest battle, was yet to come. But as he watched Annabelle laugh with Emily in her arms, radiant under the golden lights, Anthony swore silently, "Whatever comes, I will protect this love, this family. Nothing will take it from me." The weeks following the wedding felt like stepping into a new world. The headlines had roared. The gossip had burned through every corner of Seattle's elite. But the storm finally began to quiet. The scandal, the betrayal, the danger seemed like a distant nightmare compared to the reality of mornings filled with laughter and nights filled with love. Annabelle woke each day for the first time, without the weight of fear pressing on her chest. Instead, she awoke to Emily's giggles, the warmth of Anthony's arm curled around her waist, and the simple miracle of belonging. Harris Mansion, once cold and cavernous, now pulsed with life. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, catching on the bright colors of Emily's toys scattered across the floor. Annabelle filled the halls with warmth, her laughter mingling with Emily's, like a song that banished shadows. Anthony, though still a formidable businessman to the outside world, had softened within these walls. He would arrive home early to join Annabelle and Emily in the garden, chasing fireflies or reading bedtime stories. Power and wealth had defined him once, but now he understood what true richness meant. One evening, as they sat beneath the stars, Annabelle whispered, "Do you ever think about everything we survived?" Anthony tightened his arm around her shoulders every day. "And I thank fate for it, because it brought me to you." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And it gave Emily her father." He kissed her hair, his voice low. "She gave me something I didn't know I was missing: family." Once, a titan of arrogance. Richard Morgan had been humbled by truth. The revelations of Victoria's cruelty had broken him, but they had also awakened something long buried: his humanity. He visited often, sitting quietly with Annabelle, speaking softly to Emily, trying to reclaim the years he had lost. Though forgiveness did not come easily, Annabelle allowed him space. One afternoon, as they walked in the garden together, he stopped her. "I cannot undo the past, Annabelle. I cannot bring your mother back, nor erase the pain I caused. But if you will let me, I will spend the rest of my days proving that I see you, that you matter, that you are my daughter." Annabelle studied him, the man who had once been a ghost in her life, and though scars remained, she finally nodded. "Then, let's start with today." Richard's eyes shone with gratitude. For the first time in decades, he felt whole. Victoria's name had become synonymous with scandal. Stripped of influence, exiled from her father's legacy, she drifted through whispers and shadows. No longer the untouchable socialite, she was a woman haunted by the ruins of her envy. For Annabelle, the thought of Victoria no longer brought fear, only pity. Once, Victoria had nearly destroyed her. Now, she was nothing but a reminder of what jealousy could cost. On their first anniversary, Anthony surprised Annabelle with a private celebration at the mansion. Candles lined the terrace. Roses bloomed in every vase, and music drifted on the evening air. As they danced beneath the stars, Annabelle's heart swelled. "I used to dream of love, but I never thought I'd find it not like this." Anthony pulled her close, his eyes burning with tenderness. "You weren't meant to find it. You were meant to create it with me." She laughed softly, tears shimmering. "Anthony Harris, you are impossible. And you, Annabelle Harris," he murmured, kissing her gently, "are everything." Emily appeared then, toddling toward them with a broad smile, clutching a drawing in her little hands. "Mommy, Daddy, look!" A family was on the paper in bright crayons, a man, a woman, and a child holding hands beneath the sun. Above it, she had written in wobbly letters, "Us." Anthony lifted Emily into his arms, Annabelle beside them, and in that moment, they knew. This was what they had fought for. This was the future. Years would pass. Emily would grow, carrying both her mother's strength and her father's determination. Annabelle would continue to bridge two worlds, the simplicity of her past and the grandeur of her newfound legacy. Anthony would still rule empires, but always with one eye on home, on the laughter that mattered more than any victory in the boardroom. They had faced lies, danger, and betrayal, but had chosen love, and that choice had rewritten their destiny. Annabelle stood by the window on a quiet evening, the city glittering beyond. Anthony came up behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't found each other?" he asked softly. She leaned into him, her voice tender. "No, because we did, and that's all that matters." He kissed her hair, his heart full. "Then, let's keep choosing this every day." She smiled, turning to face him, her eyes shining with love every day. As they kissed, Emily's laughter echoed through the halls, and the night seemed to hold its breath. Because this was not just an ending, it was a beginning. A love story, not written by fate alone, but by two hearts brave enough to fight for it. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share it, tell it, live it. Because love isn't just destiny, it's the light we choose every single day